Um, so here are a couple of, I wanted to show you a few beautiful pastels first to inspire you. I want to talk about my influences a little bit and why I am so passionate about pastel. I'm going to cover materials this first week and explain to you some of the things that I like. They are not required. And I'm also going to show you, if we have time, a few setups of how people work with pastel, because there's a lot. Pastels are big, and so you can't just, you can have a little cigar box and you can work with that, but you can also have a huge table with 20 boxes of pastels. And I have a little demo segment, a couple of demo segments. Yes, Denise.
As most of you know, because of how I have to work now from this chair. Oh, Andre Pater.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I get really hyped up when I see his work.
Sorry.
But anyway, this will work. I know that you use the pastel pencils a lot, not so much for the main work, but you use them in conjunction with your big pastels, but your soft pastels. But I have found that I can do small pieces with just my pencils here in my lap.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't have to have a lot of stuff out, and I'm not standing, at an easel to do it. But the pencils they're great too. And the pan pastels, you can mask something in and then go in with the pencils and highlight things. And so I try to find ways to be able to do things here in my chair because I have to. So those two things, I really enjoyed experimenting and trying to cut down on what I have to get out and can hold in my lap.
And that's the other beauty. Thank you for bringing that up as we jump into pastel. The other beauty of pastel is it can be more portable for you. You don't have to have mineral spirits and all your brushes, and you can have a little bag with pastel pencils in it. And we found when I did the drawing, taking your drawing to the next level class this past year sometime, I found those wonderful little blenders that they use for cleaning stereo equipment, and they work so beautiful to move the pastel around. So there's a lot of tools that I'll be sharing with you as well, Denise.
I'm sorry, a question.
Okay.
Could you go over some different surfaces?
Yes.
And because sometimes you can, on some of the things I've worked with, you can tear your sponges up.
Yes.
Especially that Canson touch board.
Mm-hmm.
But the Canson paper, I don't like because it will ding and dent so easily. And I'm still hunting for the perfect surface for pastels.
Amen. And I have some good ideas that I'm going to share with you about surfaces because I've tried a few. Yes, and I welcome you to jump in. I'm going to push us on through, though. I wanted to show you a few of these. Denise turned me on to this one, and there's probably a lot of his work. I couldn't find much online a year or two ago when I looked it up, but she saw him in Lexington, I think, Kentucky.
That's where he is based, in Lexington, Kentucky. And I went to an art gallery there, and I just never wanted to leave.
Oh,
You should see it in person. It's just beyond description.
I had to go by memory because I didn't have the picture label, but I'm assuming Andre Pater, I've spelled it right if anybody wants to look up his work. The one on the right is by George Clason, 1889. And I'm always interested if I can find any information about their surfaces. This is pastel on paper laid on board. I don't know exactly what that means, but one of the beautiful things, if you'll notice when you visit museums, is that some of these that are hundreds of years old, I've seen some pastels that are 400 years old, and they're beautiful because there's no varnish to yellow them and crack them. And they do really hold up beautifully once you get them behind glass. And I even have, I have a big Canson cabinet out there with all the little shelves, and I have pastel paintings stacked up. And they're pretty durable. I'll have to go in there and fix a few smudges, but they're more durable than you think. This is my teacher, Daniel Green. I believe the best pastelist in the world. I mean, Mark did I have a video that I used to sell on Pastel, and I did a slideshow of Daniel Green's work. And I remember him saying, Chrissy, I can't believe he's got to be the best pastelist in the world. This is a model that we had when I was studying in New York named Fabriana. And you know that most artists will use models for lots of different things. You'll see models repeated. But this is he did a whole subway series in the subways of New York. And this is a pastel. I mean, it's just incredible to me that that's a pastel. The detail, and he has some of his subway series where you see all the little subway tiles and the shininess and the grout. I don't have patience to do anything like that, but this is a pastel by Daniel Green. These are some more. This is these are demos, and I'll show you the one he did of me here in just a minute. But this one on the right blows my mind as well. How you can get that much detail. Look at the chair. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you can kind of zoom in on some of that detail. But it's just, well, it'll take too long, but it's just incredible the detail he can get with pastel. The colors, and you can see this is done on peach paper. So we've talked a lot about toning your canvas and letting some of that tone show through and be sort of a mother color that marries the piece and makes it very consistent. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece. I'll move Eleanor over. Maybe that'll help here. Everything's in the way. But anyway, it's just, look at the shadows under her chin, the blues and the cools from that white dress, and, you know, the detail in her fingers. And it's just blow your mind good. These other demos are like, he would do a 2.5-hour demo for us, and this is what they would look like. And they're just powerfully beautiful is all I can say. Wow. He has several videos, and of all the instructors that I've ever studied with, and I'm so fortunate to have him be one of my first master teachers to ever study with, they are well worth the money to buy them. They are packed full of information. He is a fabulous teacher. So these are the two he has on pastel, and he passed away this year. So the world lost a really great teacher. It's a 4-minute clip, and it shows the inside of his studio. And I thought it would just be interesting for you guys to see this little interview. Can y'all hear it? It's Led Zeppelin for a minute. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we go way back.
Yeah.
So, well, you're in California still?
Yeah, I'm still in San Francisco, and I remember way back when I came here, it was like 35 years ago.
Yes.
And then, but there is a little story that you told me once that always, the first time I came here, you told me about the story with when you received the set of Sennelier Pastels.
Yes.
For you had a commission from the Met.
No, let me show you. Down here, right up on the top, is a portrait of a pastel of Robert Beverly Hale. He was the...
let me take...
well, wait a minute, let me tell you about it. He was the first curator of American painting at the Metropolitan Museum. However, he was a famous teacher who taught anatomy and drawing at the Art Students League for over 50 years. Wow. They commissioned me, the Art Students League, to do this portrait of Robert Beverly Hale for the Art Student League collection. He was a friend of mine. He lived across the street from me on 67th Street, and he posed for me. I put him in this pose, and I had his hands elevated so that I could get them in the portrait. But he was so weak and frail that he kept dropping his hands to his lap, that I couldn't get them in the portrait. I decided to abandon this portrait and do another of him standing and having him drop his arms full length so I could get his arms in. He was wearing this scarf, but one day he came with a beautiful new scarf. I'll have to give you a photograph of the finished portrait that I did.
Yes.
His wife had knitted him a new scarf, and I had just acquired a new set of Sennelier pastels. And it was a perfect combination because with the brand new set of Sennelier pastels, I was able to match all of the colors from dark to middle tone to light in the scarf. And that turned out to be one of the most important features of that portrait. If you turn it off a second, I'll get a photograph of the other portrait that I did, which many people think is the best portrait done in the 20th century in pastel.
Thank you!
Sorry, the music was really loud on that. It's very endearing to me. I don't know if it's helpful to you, but I wanted you to see this portrait. I have a poster of this that he signed for me while I was there. He had some prints made, and it is just phenomenal. This is Robert Beverly Hale. He is in our lineage. He was an amazing anatomy teacher, and I have one of his books that's just very valuable for the artist on anatomy, and just the detail in this painting is so incredible. I found online, here's the study that he was pointing to in the studio there at his studio Hill Farm. And it said, it is the homage made by one of the most influential portrait artists to the one of the most foremost figure drawing teachers. Also the best demonstration of the principles of chiaroscuro and observation from life. The contrast between warm and cool, light and shadow recedes behind an overall impression of an aged man of dignity and wisdom. But a close look of the technique shows that every stroke is a tour de force of Mr. Green's confidence and mastery skills. The final version of the pastel painting has a more meditative feeling because Green lowered down Mr. Hale's eyes as if he is brooding and muted the yellowish background with more peaceful green. Let me go back and show you. I should have put those side by side for you. He's got a little bit of a fret to his brow. So you see, very different, but so many artists do a study before they do a full length portrait. And this green here is really overpowering as well. So you see the other one is much more subdued and his skin tone really stands out with this one. But you feel the weight of the coat. You feel the wool of the coat, every stitch of that scarf. It just blows my mind. It's not the kind of painter I am. I'm not going to sit there and weave that scarf. But I'm very honored and blessed to have been able to study with such a skilled painter. And I wanted you to know that. Here is a couple of pictures of me in that same studio with him, with demos that he did. I took pictures of all the demos, the stages of his pastels, and I'll be sharing some of those with you because I feel that the process is really important. Because with pastel, it's easy to want to quit in the early stages because it looks like kindergarten. It can look like a mess when you first get started. And so I feel like it's really important to see the process, to know, I didn't save all this stuff. I got rid of it, but I have pictures. We got little certificates whenever we would do a week long. I would organize his workshops here in Nashville. And you see on this little paper here that he would do maybe 12 or 15 a year in different cities throughout the United States, which was awesome that he came. Back then, there was nothing happening in the 90s in Nashville. There were no workshops. There were no artists available to teach. And so I really feel like it was a divine journey that I got to study with him. If I coordinated for him in Nashville, I got a free week in New York. And so I did that several weeks. I had to pay my expenses and I had friends that I traveled with, but I feel so honored that I got to study. And here's the portrait that he did of me in the same studio that the video showed him in. Here is the the final portrait that's hanging in my studio. Here is a little bit of his lineage. And I have this on my website because I believe that classical training is important. I have notes from some men that are now dead. I have some interactions with them and notes that I think somebody one day might find interesting to pass down these timeless teachings. Daniel Green comes from this first line here. Thomas Akins, Robert Henry, George Bellows, Robert Brockman, and you also heard that he studied with Robert Beverly Hale, the one he did the portrait of, Daniel Green, and then I got to be in his line among thousands of students that studied with him. And then these are some other lines that I have studied through: Shane Neal, Everett Kinsler, Frank Dumont, John Carlton, John Singer Sargent, Carolus Duran. And then, of course, Igor. And Igor has on his website, Igor Babayev lives here in Nashville, and he has his lineage from some Russian painters, Sarov. Mark and I watched something the other night on art. It was called Made You Look. It's a Netflix show. Some of you might have watched about some fakes that they did from abstract painters. And they talked about provenance. And it was kind of a new word to me, but museums use what's called provenance. It's from the French word provenir, which means to come forth. And it's a chronology of ownership of a painting. So that when investors purchase that painting, they want to know where has it been since it left the artist's hands. And it's very important to collectors and museums. So why would our instruction not be as important, and especially to us, to know that we are being given some very valuable information? Denise, jump in there.
I remember several years ago you made a gift for, oh, dang. What's her name? The little girl. She was a little girl when I started with you.
Mandy,
yes. Mandy's fabulous. And you've made a graduation gift showing her lineage. And I just thought that was wonderful. And it's an aspect of portraiture or any type of art. It's an aspect, a business aspect that a lot of people don't really put much thought into. But when you get into collectors, it's important to them.
It's important. And
very interesting.
Thank you, Denise, for reminding me of that. I'll post the images of that book for you guys on Facebook because I think it's wonderful. It gives me joy to look at it, to see that she followed me around to all kinds of seminars and lectures, and then her artwork to watch. I started the book with her at 11, and to watch her paintings develop in that little book. So thank you for reminding me of that. And it's equally important for us. That goes back to valuing what we do, that somebody will care. I mean, how many times have you inherited a Bible or something that's 100 years old, and you open it and you go, oh, I hope there's something in there that's personal about my great grandmother to give me some insight into her life. And, we are leaving evidence for this wonderful thing that we get to be a part of 2 generations behind us. And I feel it's important. And these teachers that I've studied with feel that it's very important too. So I wanted to include that.
If you follow, the business side of it and the investment that people are making in the art, and if you I don't know, I just think it's very important. My family is, a lot of families can trace their lineage back to someone in history. And it just makes there's just a connection there. I just think it's a fabulous advantage to have, especially when all those people above you are so good. But it's really nice to be able to claim that lineage like Mandy did. And it was such a gift that you gave her when you made that book for her.
Well, and again, it does something inside your spirit to stop every now and then and do a little look at what your life is looking like and what you've walked through. just yesterday putting this PowerPoint together because I don't have a PowerPoint for Pastel. I've done these workshops in the studio. So I spent most of the day on it until about 10 o'clock last night. But I had such enjoyment looking back at some of these workshop pictures that I took. Daniel Green would spend a lot of time setting up the model and talking to us about lighting, and he would, showing us his setup on the table, and he had a little rim around the edge of his pastel table so that the pastels didn't roll off. He just thought of everything. He was so smart and such an intelligent man. He was very intimidating. He wasn't warm and fuzzy. He would, reprimand you. I'm not taking questions right now. If you ask something in between a model sitting or something, and I was scared to death of him, to be honest, 25 years ago. I was 91 or 93 when I started studying with him. But I learned so much from him, and it's important because I'm passing down, all my measuring is all from Daniel Green. The things I'm passing down are coming from him. This is a page on his website years ago that I screenshotted, and I don't know if his price has changed, but his Head and Shoulders pastels are $25,000. This is the way he charged. If it was a half figure, it went to $35,000. If it was a 3/4 figure, it went to $45,000. He added 25% is about, I think, what it equals out to, which is how I charge. And his full length paintings at whatever size, whatever's appropriate, were $90,000. If there was a detailed background, they might be $125,000. So he is, and I have some, I screenshot when I find information because it'll go away. He's passed away. I didn't even know if this website would still be up, but there is a list of the top 10 portrait artists in the world, and he is on that. So that's pretty distinguished, and it's pretty important because I don't know how in Podunk, Nashville, that I got a chance to study with him, but I'm very honored and grateful that I did. My other pastel influence was Margaret Dyer. Totally different, hippie, in a hippie bus. She traveled around in the Southeast and did workshops, and she traveled to festivals and sold her paintings. Most of them were her pastels. Most of them were $1,000, $800, $600, in that range. I found her, I don't know how I found her, but I ended up coordinating a workshop or two for her, and I went to Alabama to first study with her. I loved her. This is one of her paintings. I meant to add some more on here. I loved her layering of color and softness. And she doesn't do portraits because she said, I can't really draw faces good. I can't get a likeness. But her colors and pastel lends itself to being very soft. So you have to work hard to get sharp edges, whereas oil and acrylic is sharp all over the place. You have to work hard to get soft edges. But I loved her work. More than that, I loved her process and what I learned when I was with her. She came to us in Alabama. This is some of the pictures from the Alabama workshop. I don't know if you can see them. She does a demo the night before the workshop starts. We did this in some kind of little gallery. And then she has stopped at Goodwill, and she loaded her van with all kinds of junk that she bought at Goodwill. And she set up little scenes for us. And we had some input, but mostly, well, I can't make these, let me see where the top one is, make these larger so that you can see them. You can see her talking to the model here, and she's got a little fence and flowers, and she just made little scenes for us to paint. And it was so fun. I haven't been to many workshops like this, I have to tell you. Here's another one in Nashville that we coordinated for her. And this was a little lady named Ethel Krause, who's passed away now. She was our model. She was my friend Kathy's friend. And we set her up. She had a cane. She had, it was just a hoot. And we interacted with her. And there's just something so wonderful about working from life. that you, and I tried to find an image of my painting of her. You know, these workshop paintings you do are not your masterpieces. They're your learning textbooks. But it was so wonderful. So when I was in Alabama with my friends, Kathy and Ginger, we were so inspired by her setups and her ways of posing the models that we started taking pictures everywhere. We were out to eat, and I had my first Nikon digital camera that I could twist it and kind of sneakily take pictures with no cameras on phones back then. But just thinking about capturing candid shots of everyday life. We were so inspired. We were taking pictures back at the hotel. I don't think I put any of those on here because they swore me not to ever share them. But we were putting drapes around ourselves. And there's a picture of my friend Ginger with a glass of wine and a book at night before we went to bed. We were just so inspired. Here's another one that I didn't finish of one of Margaret's setups. And we had a bird. We painted a real bird that the gallery owner had. And so it really, it changed the course of my work because I had been working with just photos that people gave me for portrait commissions. And it was so fun to make a story out of, and to pose a model in a narrative setting. Share them with you. This is her daughters. So she's always doing her daughters and her grandchildren. She would, and these are just random things through the day. She would stop people on the street. She had a slideshow and I took pictures of the slideshow. Back in those days, we didn't have PowerPoint or anything, not that it was that old, but she would just show a slideshow on the white wall of her artwork. And so I have photographs of that, and I've edited those a little bit. But she talked about this redheaded girl. And let me make it a little bit bigger so you can see her. She said, I saw this redheaded girl on the street, and she was a teenager. And she said, if I was a man, I couldn't do this. But as a woman, I went up and I offered her $50 for an hour to take pictures of her. And so we went back to my studio or wherever she was at the hotel or whatever. And she set her next to a window and she took 100 shots of her. And then she did pastels of this beautiful red hair. And so she's showing us some clips on the slideshow. This is her way of working. And she would have us separate our pastels into piles of cool and warm, because everybody was struggling. All her pastels were thrown in a cigar box. And she just by instinct worked with warms, cools. And she was trying to explain that to us. She said, I might put orange and then I might go over it with blue. And we were like, well, how do you make those decisions? So we were all struggling in the workshop. And so she had us divide our pastels into warm and cool. And then she had us divide them even further into light, medium, and dark. So if you popped a medium into or if you popped a light color because you misjudged it into a dark area, you messed that area up. So it helped us be able to begin sorting values with the pastels and thinking of cool and warm, and opposites on the color wheel. That was her secret. And I'll share more on that later, but that was her secret to these beautiful pastels. I wanted you to see that she just started out really with a loose drawing and she started laying in all this pink. And then you see in the end, the dress is green, but underneath it is pink. And it's beautiful. They were stunning in real life. Most of them were of course, had glass over them. So I was trying to take pictures of them there because she didn't really have a website or anything. This one of the children down on the beach, you see lots of green tones in the water and the sand, but you just see her. She was a wonderful colorist. So that's what I'm trying to say here is she influenced me. And a lot of times when I come around to your easel and I pop color on there, I wouldn't have had the courage to do that if I hadn't studied with Margaret Dyer, because she was a wonderful pastelist. She does take trips to Spain and Italy now, and she stays in little funky places with people, and it just looks like a hoot if I had money, I would be traveling with her because it would be so much fun. Mm-hmm.
She's still alive?
Oh yeah, she's our age. She's going strong with her pastel and teaching, and she lives in Atlanta or down in Georgia somewhere. So those were my two main influences. I took quite a long time to explain those to you, but I feel like that's important. Who you study with and what you learn, because people brag that they're self-taught a lot. And I've seen some wonderful self-taught artists, and that's not wrong. But take advantage. If you see work, you know, one of the criteria for me is I really want to like their work. I can learn from everybody. I can learn from people who I don't like their work at all. But typically, I need to like your work and want something that you've got. And so that's what drew me to Margaret. Let me just say a little bit about pastel, and I didn't make this large enough. Again, I spent a lot of time on this yesterday, but there's always things that I need to do a little differently. Pastel is the purest form of art material. I just want to tell you that because it's important. It's the only material that's applied dry. And this was Daniel Green's, these are notes from my Daniel Green studies. I suggest beginning with the new pastel set of Prismacolor, medium hard, and I'm going to show you those because you don't fill the tooth up so easily. Daniel Green would draw with a light brown, and then as he felt more confident, he would move to a medium brown pastel in the new pastel set. And I have those numbers listed if you want to do that. And then he would move to a darker brown as he was confident in his drawing. And then he would start laying on his colors. I like to use Vine charcoal now because it's so easy to wipe off and the pastel just blends right in with it. And I just like that rather than the big square pastel stick. I find it a little harder to draw with. Another suggestion is that when you work, as you find a color that works, that you lift it up and you either rock it in the cradle of the case, or I pull them out and put them in a separate little basket. And I'm going to show you some pictures of that. So let me move on. And those are just a couple of things with pastel that I wanted to say off the bat. I'm going to talk about surfaces. Some of those huge pastels you saw in Daniel Green's study that were like 3 by 4 foot or 6 by 8 foot. They were masonite panels that he had prepared with gesso and marble dust. And so I'm going to show you I don't use the masonite as much now. I've been using just wood panels that I get at Lowe's that are actually they're underlayment for flooring, and they're only about 1/4 of an inch thick, but they're very smooth and they're very inexpensive. And I just cut those to size. So I'm going to be showing you that if you want a hard surface. These little white baskets that I get at the Dollar Tree, I lay a paper towel in those. And as I put all my warm colors for a portrait or a painting in one and all my cool colors in another. And then I have them out so that when I get ready to go back and work on that painting, I have all my colors separated in these little baskets. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about setup a little bit further down the road here. But I want to talk to you about supplies first. These are some books that I had set up for my workshop. I don't buy books anymore because we have the internet. Very rarely, and I don't use them unless I'm trying to find an image to share with you guys. But there are some wonderful books that have great information in them. These are just a few that I have. I would tell you that this book by Harley Brown is probably, out of all these, the most valuable because he's a great teacher. And you'll find not just pastel tips in there, but you'll find wonderful teaching advice in that book. Sometimes it's up to $100 or something crazy. So I have not looked at it in years. But Harley Brown, and I haven't heard anything about him in a long time, but he is a great teacher. So the rest of them are kind of picture books. This one here has some basic information about pastel. It's like one you find on the bargain table. It's okay. So I just wanted to show you those. Now, the most important supply that I use I'm going to move on down to the pastels themselves. I thought this was that. I started out, I'll say, using canson paper. I'm probably saying it wrong, but my tints, it's MITIENTES. It is a paper that has a tooth. It is supposed to be archival. It will fade, and I know that because when the art store went out of business here in Madison, I bought the big canson cabinet for $35 full of canson paper. It was an incredible buy. And all the edges of my paper where they were downstairs in my earlier studio are faded. So you can see that the paper has faded if it's in any kind of light. It wasn't in direct sunlight, but it was in light from a window. So I do know that that paper will fade. You can buy it in the tablet, but it's very different than the big sheets that you can get at in the store, in the art store, in the big cabinets. Those are 19 by 25 sheets. The ampersand.
Sorry, it's the ampersand board.
The board.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I've tried several things, but I always come back to that.
And it's a lovely board. It's some of the other boards are very much like coarse sandpaper. So when you scrape your pastel on them, it just eats it up. And there's a time for that when you're doing impressionistic or certain types of paintings. But I tend to not like those real coarse boards. And the ampersand has a nice fine grit to it, and it will hold what, 6 layers maybe of pastel.
So enough for me.
You will get to the end of the tooth, but it will hold a lot. Canson also has boards, they're like matte board now, that are a little more stable that you can do pastel on. In the video clip I'm going to show you, I show you the 2 sides of the paper, and the board has the rough, waffly side on it, and I don't prefer that side. Denise?
I've used the board, but I'm like Goldilocks. It's either too soft, it's too hard. I'm still looking for just right.
Yes, I get it. I'm with you. And I think that is why I have started making my own boards. And what I do is I just go ahead and make a few at a time. I'm doing these huge, I finished 2 huge pastels. These are oils I'm doing this time, but they're 24 by 30. They were 30 by 40 of the last little girl that I did. And there's no way I have some canson paper that big, but it's already wrinkled from being rolled up.
Yeah.
So there's no way.
And I can't stand it if it gets a ding in it. That mother, the picture or the portrait of my mother reading, there's one little dent in it that drives me to distraction. But I need a lot of tooth because I tend to run out of the tooth.
And canson paper, I've gotten 8 or 10 layers on canson paper. It's amazing that it has that much tooth. And I'm using the back side, which is smoother. So that's what we were taught with Daniel Green to use. We used the full sheet. We would do a portrait on that big sheet. So I have these huge paintings, which the longer I painted and I have no more wall space in my studio, I started getting smaller and smaller with heads. So now I work on a much smaller surface. But these are the materials that I use to make the boards. And I mix half and half. And you can play around with this, but I'll just get me a little applesauce cup or something, and I'll pour some of this Bullseye Zinsser primer. Yes, Denise?
Tanisha just asked, what is tooth?
Oh, good question, Tanisha. Let me turn my chat back on so I don't miss that. Tooth is, the paper is made, or the surface is made in a way that it's got a little bit of grooves in it. Like if you took a piece of copy paper off of your printer and tried to put pastel on it, you could do 1 layer and the rest of it, the powder will just fall off because it's so smooth. So when you do pastel, you need little grooves in the paper that the pastel can settle into, and it will grab it and hold it. So many times they use some type of grit material like marble dust or pumice or even the grit that they use in sandpaper. Some of the Wallace papers use a grit. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. And Peach posted that the plastic page books keep your pastels clean. So you can, there's lots of different ways to store your pastels as well. If you're using a sketchbook or something, you can even put wax paper or vellum in between, and that will help. There are water-soluble pastels. Thank you for that question. Thank y'all for pointing me back to this chat again. I don't know. I'm going to show you, and I said this at the beginning before some of you logged on, I'm going to show you my method of using alcohol with these pastels. I did talk to, I had to see a lung doctor last year because I have some nodules in my lungs from my childhood. And I asked him about pastel dust. And he said, your nose hairs will filter out pastel dust. Do not worry about that. And most pastels, especially the new pastels, are made with gypsum or calcium carbonate. And any kind of dust, you don't want to blow it and have it flying everywhere. I tap it, I put a little piece of aluminum foil, and you'll see that in my video. But I try to catch as much of that dust and I dump it in the trash so it's not all flying around the studio for me to breathe in. So that's an important consideration as well. And also there is the Zinsser primer you can get at Home Depot or Walmart. I use this for my oil primer on my board, and I just squeeze a little bit of acrylic color in it to tone it. It's white, it's stinky, but it's a good archival sealant that seals out any plant lignins or any possible things that could interact with your medium. Yeah, Peach.
What about, and I'm asking because I have no idea, what about gesso? You can't use gesso?
You can use gesso. They do not make gesso the way they made it in the olden days. Gesso is just white acrylic paint now, which is made from calcium carbonate. Okay. So it is very porous. Calcium carbonate is a chalk. So that's why I don't love it for my oil primes, because then my surfaces are all like, and they don't give me that nice lead surface. For pastel, I just want something that's going to be, this Zinsser, I got this idea from Rebecca Neef, and she had done a lot of research about this primer, and I have the little paperwork on it that I'll share with y'all too. But this is going to seal out, it's made for kitchens or where you've had a fire, and it seals out anything that would leach back through and cause a problem. Say that again.
Smoke or water damage, anything that'll come again through the paint.
So your masonite boards, Daniel Green was always real picky about how he told us to prepare those. They had to be cold tempered or hot tempered. I never could remember, because there was a glue in those masonite boards that can leach back through your gesso. If you're just using acrylic paint, you know how you'll put the paint on and then you'll go back and look at it if it's pressure treated or masonite, and it's all yellow, and you have to put another coat and it's all yellow again. So the Zinsser it's $8 a quart. You can buy a gallon for, I think it was $20 for a gallon, and it lasts me forever. But I use that now to coat everything, and I coat the front and the back of the board. So none of those glues, or if it's wood, none of the plant material is leaching back into whatever I'm using on it. So good questions, because there's a reason that I use these. Now, I haven't used this for 50 or 100 years yet. So I'm hoping it's archival, but it's the best I got right now. The other option is another thing that Jean Parker gave me, a little tube of this golden acrylic ground for pastels. I really like this for using on matte board, because I have people, Denise gave me some a while back, and I had a studio give me a whole bunch of matte board, and you can paint, it's clear. And you could do the same thing with clear matte medium and put your marble dust in that. But this, you just paint it on your matte board and it dries clear. And I've done several pastels on just matte board with this clear ground. And it's a medium, toothy, gritty surface. You can feel the difference. And if I have a workshop, I always show you and let you feel the matte board first, and then the grit, the clear grit that goes on top. So you can choose your color of matte board. You want to get an archival matte board. Yeah, Denise.
How many layers can you get on that with the golden product?
I've just experimented. Haven't done any lately because I've been using the marble, the boards. But I've put, especially around the face where I knew I would be working a lot, I put 2 layers of the pastel ground. And then, you know, I got at least 3 layers on there. Not as much, probably. You have to work a little more carefully. So these are all still very much experimental as to what works good.
And how many layers on the ampersand board?
Norma?
I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe more.
Dad, it's like, I'm looking for something that I can really build up. So
Yeah.
So that's 3 or 4 of the Zinsser on there, on that
No,
the ampersand.
No. The ampersand is ready to go. The ampersand pastel board is all ready to go. You don't have to do anything to it. I have purchased some of the plain ampersand boards. What are they called? Anyway, it's BORD. This is called pastel board. It already is prepared. They have 4 colors, maybe.
Well, what does that do? You is just she was just saying about the 3 or 4 layers of what? Is that the golden?
Of this
Gesso?
golden, yes.
Okay.
No, I put maybe 2 layers of that on. And she's talking about pastel. How many layers of pastel can you get on these different surfaces? Because with pastel, you can only erase your first layer. So after the first layer and you erase it, you have to keep building color and correcting. You can go all the way from black to almost white if you have enough tooth on your board but you're starting with a hard pastel and you're moving slowly to softer ones, because the softer ones will stick more than the hard pastel will.
So these are the techniques you're going to show us during this time?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm going to show you some different things. In fact, I'm going to show you the paper surface here next. But I wanted to introduce you to these products. And I'm going to go ahead and play this segment from one of my workshops, and it's about 30 minutes long. I may fast forward through some of it, but it is a demo of how I set up. So if you want to grab an orange and a light, and if you want to work during this, if it's boring for you, if I can find it.
It's going to pick out one flesh tone.
There you go.
Do the whole face flesh.
Volume's all the way up.
To do when you first start doing this is, so as you look at different colors with this orange, it's going to affect it different. Now I don't see with this gray, I don't see a lot of color bouncing up in there. Can anybody see any color bouncing up in there? From the shadow, you don't see a whole lot. The gray doesn't affect it a lot. Now this one, you do. You see, I see a little bit, not much, but a little bit of orange there. But I can see the purple all up in the bottom of that orange. Can you see that? Let's see what happens with this one. The blue. The blue is going to be pretty powerful. Can you see blue in there? Now, if we had these open, we'd get a little bit more reflected light. So it's pretty dramatic right now, the way you're seeing it. But there's a lot of blue in there. A lot. Look how it lightens the whole bottom of that orange up, putting that yellow. But there's going to be yellow in that orange now. Whereas you might see a little yellow in the top before, but without that, you're not, you wouldn't see all that yellow, and it would be very dark underneath there. The same way with a head. When I'm going around and helping people with a portrait, whatever's around that face, a face is a very light plane for the most part, unless you're painting a really dark-skinned person. But it's going to be very reflective, and it's going to pick up whatever colors. If it's all flesh under here, then there's light that's going to bounce into that shadow too. So you have to kind of be aware that whatever's around your sphere or your object is going to be bouncing back and forth into it. Can you see green? Can you see green? Now you have to really make yourself look. The longer you sit here looking at that orange, the more color you're going to see. And the more you when I get ready to paint something like this, I would pull up paintings of oranges and fruit, and I would start looking at what other people have seen, and then I look at it and I go, oh, darn, that is in there. That color is in there. So that's kind of an important thing to do as you're painting too. Now here's black. Let's see what happens with black. There are a lot of particularly still life painters who like to use black boxes. The old masters used very dark backgrounds, and their subjects were just like a sparkling jewel. Part of their subject would totally melt into that black background. And it's pretty dark down here where the shadow meets the orange, and it almost totally just, you lose that whole edge from shadow into orange there. Whereas if you have a light color under it, it changes it. And that's all I've got color-wise. I'm going to go back to the white and just paint with that white, little white napkin thing under it. I just like that better. I like that contrast better, and I like the different colors that it picks up. Now I'm seeing purple. I'm seeing purple all around the edge of this shadow right here. I'm seeing really strong blue right there. I'm seeing purple in here. Y'all see that at all? It's hard to see. It's hard to see when normally when you first start looking at, I was just like that, you just see orange. You just see orange and you don't see all those colors. But I do see a lot of that purplish pink up here in the top. And when I first started, I painted a little bit on this last night, and I think I had this gray underneath it. And I did not see purple in that orange. All right, now I don't see any purple. Well, I may see a little bit of purple on the top, but I was seeing some blue in the top of that orange. So see how the whatever's around your subject is going to affect it. The lighter your subject is, the more reflective it is, and the more it's going to pick up color. If you're outside on a day like this, as soon as the clouds clear and it's a totally bluebird day, that blue is going to be in everything. It's not going to be in the darks as much, but you're going to see blue in the tops of the leaves. You're going to see them on the top of your car. When I looked at this morning, my whole driveway was blue for a minute when the sky was blue, where it was wet and it's concrete, and it was really, really blue.
Basically, this first segment, and it's important because you can't see the colors I was describing on the video. But when you're sitting there in real life, you could see some of them, Peach. But when you're in real life, there's no substitute for learning from life as much as you can. I'm a big proponent of working from photos and using our big monitors and things that wonderful iPads and things that we have now, but also give yourself plenty of time to look and study from life, because you'll just see so much more, and you'll remember that the next time you paint something similar. So that was the whole purpose of trying all those different colors. Daniel Green would have a huge box full of cloths that were like 2-yard pieces of cloth. And he would put a different backdrop behind blonde hair and brown hair. And he would try a whole array of things before he settled on what he would paint. And I think too often we just rush right into what's in front of us and we don't do much planning. So I think that's important. And even if you just play around today with an orange and if you have different colors of paper or cloth, and try painting from those and see what colors you see. It's amazing that if you're painting a lemon and there's no purple anywhere, you put a white piece of cloth under a lemon, you're going to see purple in the shadows. Where does that purple come from? You know, so you will learn so much by just playing around with a piece of fruit today and looking for color. You will have, I promise you, if you're not a pastelist already, you will develop an addiction to buying pastels. And you will just covet all the beautiful colors that you can buy in pastel. I buy every set I can possibly get my hands on. I don't anymore because I have too many, but I used to buy the cheap sets. I have some Japanese sets that were my favorite. Korean, I could never find, I don't even know what they said on them. I tried to get a Chinese person one time to read and tell me what they said, and she said it just says color crayon or something. I don't know. But you'll develop that. So you need to know how to use these colors. You don't want to just get your skin tone out. Like I say in this video, you know, you're going to just pull out an orange, maybe a dark orange, a medium orange, and a light orange to do this. It's going to be boring. If you don't learn to see color and to see what's in the shadows and see what the surrounding things are reflecting into your subject, you're going to miss an opportunity to make some really amazing artwork, and then bump up those colors that you see a little notch and make it just pop. Any comment or question about that so far?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, when you're probably going to hit that later. I'm just curious right now. After you put all your layers and pastels down and all of that, do you put a fixative on it?
No, and that's a great question. People are very, they're very, it's individual. Some people do spray, but I was told from the very beginning by Daniel Green not to spray. And I will get my sample for you guys to see. Actually, this orange that I worked on, I did a second orange and I sprayed one of them, and I showed you the difference in the sprayed one. It darkens the pastel, it changes the color. You're adding a liquid that you have no control over really onto the top of your beautiful pastel. So I do not advise you to spray. And if you take your beautiful painting, like one of my students did one time to a gallery to be framed, they sprayed it without telling her and they ruined it. Wow. So some frame shops will not handle a pastel because of the liability they feel unless you allow them to spray it. If that's the case, I would go to another frame shop, and I frame most of mine myself now, but I don't use spray. You can use spray. And Daniel Green did say that if you find that you lose the tooth of your paper or your surface and you have to make a correction, you can spray a very fine mist over an area and it will tooth it back up so that you can apply another layer of pastel. He advised us to be very careful if we did that. You know, when you shake a can and spray it, it's liable to put a big spurt out.
Right. I've experienced that.
The Krylon spray that he uses, I've read the ingredients on the side, and I can't even pronounce any of those. I do not know what they will do after 10 years or 20 years. Some people use hairspray. If you're playing and you got something you want to hang up and you don't want to put glass over it, it's not some kind of masterpiece, do whatever you want to with it. But if you're creating beautiful portraits that are going to be handed down or some artwork that is really precious to you, I wouldn't put a spray like that on top of it.
But when you add layered, it keeps it better when you're layering the paint or the pastel, or does it? Because you always have to put it behind glass. Those are two-part question.
Yes, you do have to put it behind glass. Now, these pastels I have in my hallway and my kitchen that I've added alcohol to, they do not smear. They're like a watercolor. So in that case, no. But they do. That's the other thing about when you're a pastel artist, you have to spend more money because you have to have glass, a mat board, or space to cover your pastels. So those are all considerations that you have to think about with pastel.
Well, I was asking because I have a lot of pastel paintings that I've done, and they're all behind glass, but I sprayed them. So everything that I'm learning is, I just want to know a different way or a better way, So,
right.
Yeah.
That was really just an emergency situation when you've lost the tooth and you're almost done with a painting and you can't get it. Am I really loud? I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. And you can't, that's kind of an emergency thing is what I would say if you need to spray it to get the pupil or the highlights to stick in the eye or something, but be careful. I have known of paintings to get ruined with this. Somebody else had their hand up. Norma?
Yeah, I have a question about if you lose the tooth, like I had a struggle with the drawing on one. It's not a portrait, it was a landscape actually. But there was I've lost the tooth on it. Is there other means besides the spraying, like denatured alcohol or something to get tooth back on it so that I can work
Denise
on top of it?
must have an experience to share.
I was just reading, Norma, on those boards, and it says, one person said you can put endless layers on it and then more. I don't know about that, but
well, maybe I don't get that far.
The ampersand company said that you can actually wash the pastel off of that board. It will leave a ghost, but then it will cover it up. So I thought, I got to ask Norma, has she ever washed something off that board? That's what they just said.
I heard that, and I did try that. Someone else in class had told us about
that. We did that with somebody in class. They washed the board off, and one of my students' husband, Bob McGill, that does a lot of art. He took one of the ampersand boards, not the pastel boards, but he uses the black one, and he soaked it in the bathtub for 2 days, and it did not warp. He was trying to be scientific and see it didn't warp. It didn't swell. So the ampersand boards are a good bet. They're not going to warp.
Like marble dust on the surface of it?
The pastel might. So, I mean, I wouldn't say go soak it in the bathtub, but you could definitely try. Yeah, Denise?
Just out of curiosity, why was Bob trying to do that? He paints on cabinet doors. And it's incredible. Incredible.
I know. He uses a razor blade and applies the paint.
Please leave Bob's name on our page so everybody gets to look at Bob's art on cabinet doors with razor blades. It's phenomenal.
Wow, I like to see that.
I will. And he's a hippie. You'll love him too. He's so
I like hippies. I like hippies. I have a question too, real quick. I have a lot of pieces of board, that I always collecting stuff and it's all messed up. That kind of board. Can you put pastel on this? And I want to prime it, I think. Can I prime it with gesso? Because my gesso is getting hard and I need to start applying it to stuff. So
and that's the other thing with gesso. It will mildew in the jar. It will get I've opened so many jars that are moldy, it doesn't last. The Zinsser doesn't do that. Right. You can prepare that for pastel or oil but make sure you seal it with something that's going to totally seal out any plant, because the plant lignins in canvas or linen or wood are the problems. They have to be blocked from your oil or your pastel so that they don't interact with the pigment.
So what do I put on it? So what do I put on there?
The
what do I put on it?
The Zinsser. Yeah, that's my best suggestion to you. Let me go back. Hold on.
Because I wanted to use up my what should I put because I don't want to waste that gesso because I have a lot of it.
Well, and I want to start that. You could use that. And if you want to use pastel, this Frederick's bag of marble dust is available at any art store, or you could go on Amazon or Jerry's or Hobby Lobby doesn't. Hobby Lobby is not an art store; it's a hobby store. But and then I just use a little tube of acrylic paint. I squirt it in the little cup with the marble dust and the Zinsser, and stir it up really good, and it'll go on kind of gritty. You can paint it on or paint it on, but that's my best suggestion to you. If you want to use the gesso, just mix it with the marble dust to do the pastel with.
Now this is on board though. This is on my board.
Yeah, on board. Yeah, and I do the front and the back usually, especially if I'm using masonite or even I do the front and the back because it'll warp. As it dries, it shrinks. And it'll cause the board to pull this way. I did a huge painting for the Cattlemen's Association a few years ago on a board. And I only Zinssered one side. And when I finished, it had shrunk up like this. So I had to flip it over and paint the back side and put something heavy on it. And even after that, a large board is more likely to warp on you if you're just using a wood board or a masonite board. I had to put it in a frame to ship it, because I didn't want it to arrive at the client's destination in a warped
Now,
warped piece.
Now this board that I have, you see how I don't know if you can see it, but you see how thick it is? That
won't warp. No, I don't think that would warp. And I'm talking about larger pieces. A small board won't warp, but I just go ahead and flip it over when I'm using Zinsser.
I see.
Seal the whole thing because it looks better. And I do the sides and the top and the back. It just works better to do that.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a lot of little pieces that I want to start putting art on or do something with it. Yeah. Okay.
Gotcha.
Cool.
All right. Good questions. Thank you, guys.
I have a question because I don't know.
Yeah, Peach.
Pastels. I have a set of, what is this thing? Oh, they're Food Favor, what are they? Pastels, blah blah blah. I have pencils, plus I have all kinds of soft pastels. Are you supposed to start off with the pencils and then go to soft stuff? I've experimented, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Let me go back because I totally skipped the rest of the supplies. Hold on. See, I get so excited about this stuff. Okay, here we go. So in my list,
there are people who use just the pencil. I mean, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And when I got in a situation where I couldn't spread out all those pastels, I just used my pencils. And no, I don't think you're supposed to, but I saw a little sign this week online. It says, art has no rules.
That's right. That's, yeah. Kind of feel like that.
That's good. That's so true. So here's what I start with, and this is my best suggestion to you, and it's a little costly, but if you have zero pastel supplies to start with, this Prismacolor new pastel set of 96 colors. It used to be $40-something back when I first started doing this. It is now about $100 for the whole 96 set. That's all the colors pretty much that they make. You can do anything with this set. You can supplement and add a few more darks because you never have enough darks with pastel. I add a few more greens, especially if you're going to be doing landscapes or plants or flowers, because the greens are limited. They're not good greens. But this is my very best suggestion to you is the new pastel set. It will cost you about $100, but it's so worth it. It'll last you for years. Denise?
What I ended up doing is I use that set a lot because there's less dust than with the soft ones.
That's right.
And I would use this in my pencils. And then when I finished, I would pick out 2 or 3 colors of the soft pastel. And then I would just go over places on the top. And it's kind of like frosting on the cake. That was just how I went about paring it down so it was manageable from my chair.
Excellent. That's exactly what I do too. In fact, some of the pastels I'll show you next week of my portraits and things, I have just done mostly a charcoal drawing. And then I put little like sepia type color in the cheeks and the lips, very thin layer of pastel on, and then gone to the softer ones, the Senneliers or Unison. I've got a picture of Norma's Terry Ludwig portrait set that we were just coveting and lusting over in class one day. That was so beautiful that I'll show you. But those softer
Norma
pastels,
has Terry Ludwig's.
Norma does.
You need to send us a picture so we can just Norma.
I have it. I'll show it to you. It's on here somewhere. Here it is. And there's Norma's hands holding it.
Doesn't look like that now.
No, I'm sure it doesn't. But they're beautiful pastels. Pastels are very expensive. They can be $6 or $7 a stick. Begin reminding you that they're pure pastel. And so I like that new pastel set to start. And then, you know, once I know what I'm going to work on, when I go to the art store, or I'll order a stick at a time, I'll just buy some beautiful soft ones in lip colors or cheek colors or dark browns, because there's no good dark browns in the new pastel set. But the brands that I suggest, or whatever, you can find cheap ones like these Sohos. What did I do with those?
That's what I came to your studio with.
The Sohos.
That's all I had.
They're Jerry's brand. Well, here's all my, I'm just going to show you how I set them all. I'll show you that next week. But the Sohos they're okay. I bought the set. It was $14 for like 40 or something. And I just use them for backgrounds or to fill in colors, but they work just fine. There's a Mungo brand. You want to make sure that it doesn't say chalk.
Mungos suck.
Yeah, they're not that great. They're okay, maybe.
Free. They sent them free to try them. They suck like a Hoover.
So we know what Peach thinks about those. They're not. They're not.
We
good.
really know. We really know what she thinks.
But you know, I don't think, you know, I've bought some cheap ones too, and I think, and especially if you're getting started, you know, and you don't know if you want to do it or not. It's you can try the cheap ones too.
Yeah, look,
to learn if you want to do it.
You can't.
But if you end up loving pastel, you will. The habit will. I mean, it's like cocaine, you know. I don't know what cocaine is like. Let me rephrase that.
Well, it's like chocolate for me.
Chocolate,
so
yeah. It's so enjoyable. And you guys, that reminds me, Denise, I spent the first part of my pastel education with this new pastel and a roll of masking tape, numbering them all so that I could put them back in order. I mean, I was out of my mind. I was playing with these things, I think, because I was scared to use them. But I was trying to figure out a way to organize them, because when I get done, they'd be everywhere. And I'm like, what am I going to do with them now? So I'm going to show you that when I show you my setups. But what I ended up with was I divided them into warm color box and a cool color box. And that helps me. And then I even divide them down further, you know, at times into, Mary, jump in there, please.
Yeah, hi. Can you give a description of what are warm colors, what are cool colors? I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I need that too, Mary. I need that too, Mary.
I've been doing this for a ton of years. And it's like, I still don't get this.
I still don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Thank you.
What a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. And yes, it depends on what it's beside as to whether it's warm or cool. So as we look, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, this set of Prismacolors. So I would just tell you, can everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would just tell you that all this row to about right here, I would put in my cool box. The greens, the grass, the cool grass, lay down in the cool grass. It helps remember that. All these blues to here, I would put in the cool box. So my box would include all these blues and all these greens to here. Mm-hmm. The yellows and the reds and oranges will all go in the warm box, and the pinks. Now, if you look at these colors and you look at, for instance, on these blues up here, as you move more towards purple, they start to warm up. So is purple a warm or a cool color? It gets warmer as it goes over because it gets more red in it. So you have that middle ground of colors. So you'll see in my drawers, my pastel drawers out there, that I have a drawer. I finally settled on these little boxes that have the 3 drawers in them. And so I'll just pull out all my flesh colors when I'm working on a portrait. And I'll lay those drawers around me, and I'll pull out the colors that I think I see in my subject, and I'll put those in the little baskets. And then when I'm all finished, I put them all back in their drawers that they go in. I might have another box for browns and blacks and whites. Half the battle of pastel is being organized enough to find your colors.
Yes, Lord.
Because you stop and it breaks your creative flow to have to.
And I'm not.
Stop.
Yeah,
I'm not organized enough.
Me neither.
Well,
Me
good.
neither.
So
this is gonna be good.
One whole segment, probably next week. And we're not going to have time for the master video, but that's okay. We'll get to those. One whole segment will be on organizing and how, some ideas on how to organize your colors. The tape really did help me because they send it to you in a pretty organized manner. They send it to you with all the greens together and the pinks together and the purples together, just like you see it here. So
well, that's forever gone.
Yeah, I know. The first time you use them, you get them all out of whack. And I always apologize to my students who come in with a brand new set, because I'll pull out 10 colors and then I'll go, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know where that one goes. And that, you know, people that are very detailed and analytical want to keep them in order. So that's why I would wrap that little piece of masking tape around it. It also let me hold.
Are you referring to me?
No, not you, Amy. But that also gave me a way to hold it, and I put the number on it, and then I could put them all back. So great question on warm and cool colors, and we'll talk more about that as we go. I'll show you some examples of warm and cool. The Sennelier box, this little half set, is great. You really don't need the full sticks of Sennelier, because you just use such a small amount. The color deposits, and it's so vibrant, you don't have to have as much as you do with the harder stick. So the problem with them is they're so soft that they crumble. So if you drop it, it's going to totally crumble.
Paint them on with.
But they go.
You could, but no, you use them. I just use them. You use the whole thing, and they're fat. So it's like when you were in kindergarten and they made you use those fat pencils. You hated it because it's harder to get the detail with it. But you learn, it's an instant way to make you math. You know, us detail people who try to get in with the little brushes and make everything all neat. It makes you have to mask things and be a little looser with your techniques.
I like the way they flow. They're real nice. I like Sennelier.
They are beautiful. They're my favorite. And I worked for the Savoir Faire is the company now. And I met her at Plaza, one of the reps one time, and she let me be one of their promoter people. And so she gave me some free sets and papers and all kinds of things to try with my students. So it was a lovely relationship for a while. The Terry Ludwig. Then the last thing on supplies that I'll mention is pencils. Nobody ever showed me about blending pastels. Daniel Green just used the new pastels to blend with, and that was fine. But I have really found the pencils are hard and they do not deposit much color. And I'll show you that in the demos, but they help me move the pastel around without mushing it in, making it dull and flat and lifeless like a tortillon will do, or even the little soft blenders. And Denise is pulling one up right now. SOFF.
I was just going to say it depends on the brand.
Yeah.
You know, this brand.
I have Conti and Derwent and Carbothello.
Okay, Carbothello is harder.
Yes.
But let me show you the ones that are really soft.
I'm going to write that.
Here you go. These are softer.
What's the brand?
The Faber-Castell are softer.
Okay.
But there's another one that's even softer than that.
The Derwent is pretty, the Conti is pretty soft. And it's important to know that when you're working, because it's frustrating when they're really hard and the color won't come off. But I like the really hard ones to blend with, because I'm really not trying to deposit any more color. I have a big batch of color there. I just want to marry the two colors together or soften.
But if I'm using a pastel pencil mostly because of my position of not being able to stand at the easel, I use these. That's the Faber Pastel. I mean Faber Castell.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. That's all I had about the pencils. Yes, Mary, jump in there.
My pencils, you know, they get sort of like, are we sharpening them, and how are we sharpening them?
Oh boy, is that ever a question?
Loaded question. I do show in the demo, I believe, the way that I sharpen them or used to sharpen them was with a single edge razor. I sharpen my new pastels that way because they're square and they will lose their, so you don't get a little, if you need a little point on there. And I also sharpen the pencils because if you stick them in certain pencil sharpeners, it just goes and eats them right up and it breaks the lead. And if you drop those pastel pencils, if they roll off the table, the little pieces of pastel lead inside will break. So as you sharpen it, they'll fall out. So you do have to handle them carefully so they don't break inside. Denise has some wonderful sharpeners that sharpen.
I've never found anything that, I mean, I've tried so many sharpeners and I've never found anything that is sufficient except for a razor blade.
A razor blade.
I don't know. I don't know what Norma's experience is.
No, I was going to ask that question because I can't find anything other than Igor showed us how to use a knife to sharpen them, and he always said that was the best thing. And I've actually come to believe that because everything.
Well, that's just like sharpening, like you did, like the last class we were talking about charcoal pencils or something, sketch pencils. It's the same process, right? Sharpening it like that.
Yes, and we watched a demo with the guy rolling it and sharpening it to get a big long lead on the charcoal pencil. The same way with your pastel, you could probably do that. Pastel is so soft though that it's going to break easy on you for the pencil, so you do have to do that carefully. I got a little sharpener out there. Norma's showing us one.
This one, and it worked well for a long time. It's a AF matte.
Let me spotlight you.
Hold on. What I found is they never last. Even expensive pencil sharpeners, over time, it's useless. Over time, they just never last. Now, I will tell you this: the Carbello, is that how you say it? I can sharpen those in a really good pencil sharpener. Electric pencil sharpener, but the ones that I like so well that are soft, I cannot sharpen those in a pencil sharpener.
They break off.
Break off. That's true.
Thank you.
Brass fancy one.
Is this the same, Norma? Was it Norma?
Yes.
Yeah, AFMAT. I just bought these and I'm still kind of working with it, but the hole is not real big for some of my, I don't know how to do that yet, but this was one that I invested in. I sure hope it works good. I tried it a few times, but.
I have that one, but I use that for graphite and some of my charcoal pencils.
Yeah, that's what.
I have a bigger boss that I've tried 2 or 3 different kinds to use pastel pencils on it. And it's just a total waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your safest bet is to use a single edge razor blade and just on a paper towel. And I hold it kind of like towards me.
Yeah.
And just turn the pencil and sharpen.
And it's such a pain. Okay. You'd think they'd come up with a better way, but.
Also, use sandpaper.
Yes.
Little.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
We never know what those were for. They always come in your little drawing kits. And you just pull the little,
those. Yeah. I got those.
If you want to get it down to a point. But I have a cheapo one that I got at Goodwill, a pencil sharpener, and I've been using it lately, and it's great. It depends on how sharp the blades are on it, I think, because it just sharpens, and I can tell if the pencil starts pushing in, oops, nope, it's not working good, and I pull it right back out. But this one is a nice, heavy, old one, and it must have really sharp blades in it. Yeah, Denise?
I don't know if you all knew this or not. I didn't for a long time. Some of those electric pencil sharpeners, you can buy replaceable blades to fit inside.
Oh, didn't know that.
And I'll find it, but I do have a little hand sharpener that I got at one of the portrait conferences that has 2 points. It'll let you sharpen it to a long point and to a short point. And it's a pretty good sturdy one that you can do a good job with. So again, it's not foolproof. Sometimes they break off.
Pencil sharpeners are almost a joke around here because I've tried so many. And I'll tell you, you know what works better than anything? That old wall crank one I've got.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. That's
Like out of
Yeah.
a 1950s classroom.
Old
Yep.
school. Those are old schools are always the best.
I have the original that I grew up with.
Oh,
Really?
yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
Is it still
But I don't know-
sharpening well?
Oh, perfectly.
Oh,
Perfectly.
wow.
But I don't know if we should be making it like a point, or do we want it more
Round.
dull?
Mhm.
Well, it depends on what you're doing, but for my blending purposes, and I'll show you those in the demo. We're running out of time, which is fine because we've got plenty of time to cover all these things in more detail. I'm just using the point of it to blend with.
Okay.
I'm not using the side like I would. Now, Denise is talking about using the pencils to do the whole piece with, then you're going to obviously need to sharpen a lot.
Mhm.
But I don't typically always, if I'm working on a little small area like an eye or something, then I need to get that pencil sharpened so I can get down in there and do those details. But for the most part, I just want enough lead showing that I can move the pastel around on the page surface and get it to blend a little bit. I'm going to skip around. I wanted to show you because this is in one of the videos that I'll be using and showing you. This is a quick little demo I did in art camp one year for the kids. And I took pictures of it. One of the little girls, Lauren, that was in art camp, posed for me. And the kids, I couldn't believe it. It maybe took me 15 minutes, but they were so attentive. And I think it was having a live model there. But I wanted you to see that I start out with just, of course, I do my measurements like I do for a head. And I get my drawing pretty detailed for pastel with charcoal, even to putting a little bit of shading in. With skin tone, I don't want to do a bunch of black charcoal where the shadow is going to go, especially if it's a light complected person, because I'll have to work to get that charcoal off. But I wanted you to see this middle stage, and I have another stage of this. I've done several of Denise's family members that were gracious to let me to pose for me. I'll find those for next week. But I wanted you to see the stages that can be very messy in the beginning. They're very much just little separate tiles of color, blocks.
Or as we have heard, the burn victim stage.
Burn victim stage for portrait.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Ugly
and bizarre. And I remember Daniel Green telling us that, you know, if you don't put some good bright color on there, when you start blending away, it's just going to, and because like Shirley, one of my teachers used to say, we're like bugs, we're attracted to the light. So with pastel, we pick up all these light colors. And my first few paintings in pastel were like Casper the Friendly Ghost. In fact, that's what I said. And I'm sitting there working on them and think, oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Get up and walk away from them across the room. And they were awful. They were so light and chalky. And so I've learned to put really bold, brilliant color down so that as I begin to blend and work those layers, that color glows up through the pastel. Okay. So here's my little art camp demo that I was talking about. I'll do the charcoal. I'll do a pretty detailed drawing for my pastels. I like to have a foundation under there. You don't have to do it that way. That's just the way I do it. And you see this color, this picture of her, I bumped the saturation up so that I'm seeing all this bright color. But I've never finished this. In fact, the mother, this is probably 10 years ago, the mother texted me a year or so ago and said, hey, can I get that painting of Lauren from you? And I never have gone back to work on it. So this thing has been smudged, but you do see a little bit of my procedure. Yeah. Here again is my charcoal drawing. This was a portrait commission I did a few years ago. Here's a little bit of the first layer that's real yellow and real bright in the cheeks. Here's another one of a little girl that I did some years ago. And again, it starts with my charcoal and these little blocks of bright, bright color. Wow. And then as I begin to work to smooth with the pencils, it's just like with oil paint. You almost can't make any progress until you get enough paint on there to start moving it around and blending the pieces together. This is the little girl's brother. And I didn't put the photo of that in there. I should have put that in there, but you can see that, you know, I'm starting, you feel lost on the first layer of pastel. But, you know, I make them really bright, because when you get back from the studio, when you get back from the wall they're hanging on 10 feet, if you've made them really dull and just flesh color, like what I'm seeing myself on this Zoom meeting, they just are dead. They don't have any life to them. So here is one of my students, Vicky, her son that passed away, and I did a commission for her. And you see how bright these colors are. Now I did tone those down some. Here's a demo I did in class. And you see, this was, I don't know, an hour and a half demo, but you see how messy this first stage is.
Yeah.
And I'll show, I think I have a video of this one. I have several video demos that I'll show you, that I think it's helpful to watch the application, then the blending, and how they do go through these middle stages that are very awkward and not fun to be in. This is a series I did of my grandson.
Oh, wow.
When I did this one, I was just like grossed out, because he had this red lips. He still is. The lips are still too red. It's hanging. They're hanging in his room in there, and he doesn't really love them. But I did this whole series of him with this duck. And you see how messy this is. You've got it all over your hands. I have to go wash my hands every 10 minutes or so, or I have to have some baby wipes by my easel. But here's the third one. Let's see. Those are just some other pictures in the series. And I'm going to post that little video for y'all, because it's absolutely adorable of him. And he's 13 now. So and so you see the difference in how this looks in the middle.
Yeah.
This is when you think, oh, pastel is not for me. I can't do this. This sucks. And you want to throw the towel in. And so I think the third and final stages of pastel are the important stages that I'm going to try to really demonstrate for you guys, so that you can push through the middle to get to the blending stages. Those are, I think, all the sequence ones I have. And I think those are probably more beneficial. I'm going to send you the orange video so you can just see that I do a quick gesture drawing and then how I lay those in. If you want me to, I can play parts of that next week. I may have more time to pull out just some little clips. Any questions?
Christy, did I hear you mention oil pastels? Did you mention oil pastels?
I did not. And
okay. I thought I heard. Okay.
No, I was talking about oil paint. I do have 2 paintings that I found through the years of oil pastels. I never had any luck with them. They always came in the little sets, and they were freebies. They felt like crayons to me. They would not blend. And I got frustrated, and I got rid of them quickly.
I have some old ones. Peach. Okay, Peach. I have some real, I have some real old ones that I don't want to throw away, but they're real hard. I'm just trying to figure out how can I, I just don't want to throw them out. So want to see how I can restore them.
I'm going to show you, and I'm going to make a note of that too. I'm glad, because you guys are helping me finish the rest of the sessions. I'm going to show you a couple of samples, and then I'm going to see if I can find any little video clip. I think they can be similar to encaustic, because they're very waxy.
Caustic?
So, encaustic is painting with wax.
Oh.
So I think you probably would handle them more like Gene Parker has done some demonstrations for us on encaustic.
Oh, so, wow.
Okay. I might just touch on that. I'm not going to teach on that because I don't have any experience with it, but I'd like to show you some examples of it. I agree with Peach's note. Give them to Poverty Arts, whatever that Poverty Arts thing is, Poverty in the Arts. But give them to kids or whatever to play with. Some of my kids love them, and they've done some beautiful work with them. So
I mean, they're so old that they don't make a mark. That's how old they are.
Yeah. So any material that frustrates you like that, I'm not for anything that's frustrating. But it's like I think Sargent said, if you know what you're doing, or Helen Van Wyck, if you know what you're doing, you can use a broom. You can use your elbow. You know, if you're really, really skilled, you can make inferior things work for you.
Then I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know how true that is. It's just a quote.
Yeah. Okay.
So Peach is saying that encaustic artists use a lot of pastel dust, pastels, and wax. So that's another possibility. You know, the thing with art is it's endless. We can do this from now to eternity, and we never run out of things to learn or try or materials. This last example I have is Denise.
This is one of your better pieces, Christy.
Oh, this is her beautiful granddaughter, Allie. And I did this demo in class. I did not video it, but the drawing of it was really much better than the final piece as far as
love the drawing,
looseness, and just.
I wish so bad I'd said stop, Christy, and draw it again. I want the drawing too.
It's beautiful.
This lesson, and I've touched on this on different classes, but this lesson I incorporated something I learned from Juliet Aristides on patterns in nature. That we're not just trying to create a likeness of a person, but we're also looking for beautiful design elements. And I have a whole series that I do on patterns in nature: the spiral, the meander, the explosion. And so in this one, I have some instructional images where I show you the curves, the S curves. Allie, everything about her hair, her lips, her chest, her hat, everything was curvy. And so what I did was I put these strong curves in there, and I made them strong enough so that as I started working in pastel, I didn't lose those beautiful shapes and designs. I did lose them some. But it was a great lesson for me in not just plunking down and trying to get a likeness and being so focused on that, but to also incorporate beautiful designs that you see in nature, in all of your artwork, in portraits, in still life, maybe even with the shadows in between your items on a still life table, that you create, you know, these beautiful designs. So I wanted to share those with you and just show you that there's so much to this, and there's a lifetime of learning and excitement about it as we look at it even together.
You know how I feel about the Zoom classes. I think they're great. You know, we get to see things we normally wouldn't get to see because we all couldn't get close enough. As far as I'm concerned, every aspect of this is, except for the social end of it, every aspect of the academics of this is better on Zoom. There is one thing that I really, really miss. And that was when we were all in class. And at the end of class, at least I did, a lot of people would wander around and get the privilege of seeing what everybody else was working on, no matter how big, no matter how little. I would love to see us incorporate that into our Zoom class, and anybody that wanted to share what they've been working on this week. It's inspiring to me to see what everyone else is doing. And, you know, if it, you know, I know we couldn't take too long, but I just think it would be great to see everybody else's work. Just hold it up, you know. And
I agree. I love that, Denise. And some of you, Peach has gone to get it. Look at her.
Okay, Peach, let's see. Put her up so we can see.
And Peach share it on Facebook too. Oh,
she gonna always.
Wait a minute. Let me highlight.
Wait a minute,
stop
Peach.
the share. Hold on. Okay.
I sold this sucker.
Oh, wow. You sold.
Just screwing around.
It's beautiful.
Birds.
I've been following all your birds. It's beautiful.
I didn't see them all. I saw one that you posted, but I didn't see everything. I didn't see all those.
Is that on watercolor paper, Peach?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, I like all of those. Yeah.
Oh, and once you get really sucky.
I want to know how long it took you, Peach, to do that red poppy one.
I'm a wise guy and say what I always tell people, and then I'll tell you the truth. All my life.
I understand that point.
Because when people think you do something quick, well, I'm not paying for that. But in reality, most of the paintings took me between 5 and 10 minutes.
I mean, you do it like 24/7. Seem like you're always, which is I love.
But I understand your point.
It's like
I love it.
Let me show you something that's so dreadful. I nearly threw up. Hang on.
That's a great idea. Maybe we should save the last.
Really is.
The last
we
10
should
minutes.
We should show our horrible stuff and our great stuff.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh.
No matter what way you turn it.
Abstract. I like it.
Well, I see some form in there. I see some different things.
Love it.
Yeah, well,
you just do something else to it. I mean, add to it. Don't stop.
I'm going to add a lot to it so I can cover that mess up. It looks like somebody vomited on a canvas.
Well, but I saw a person in there. I saw a person when you held it straight up.
It's a dead person.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Who else has stuff? I want to see other people.
Anybody else want to share anything?
Shelley did the most awesome abstract this week of a scene in Arizona. Shelley, will you show us?
Let's see it.
Is she still there?
Yeah, she's there. I'm looking at her.
I'm gonna kill you.
Will you show it? No, she can't get to me. It's COVID. She can only come to my porch.
Oh my goodness.
It is so cool. It has such an abstract quality. Shelley, you'll have to tell us about it.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
I like that.
The color isn't coming through as much as it did on my phone, Shelley.
That's nice.
Is that on canvas? Is that on canvas?
Shelley, you gotta tell them what you painted on.
No, it's on well, that when I turn it at an angle you can see the color better.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Because it's very, very pink.
Yeah.
But it's some days when my legs are really bad, I have to sit a lot. And so my husband bought me these little hard panel insulation boards because I'm a hardware junkie.
Yeah.
And they were like $5. And so I just collaged on top of them. It's they're they're really lightweight. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I usually work on some kind of board or something. And
yeah.
I was out. And so he came out of the hardware store with 2 of those the other day. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make that work? And then.
But wasn't that cool that you did?
Mm-hmm. That was from a postcard. My niece Katie is a paramedic, and she got sent to Arizona to a Navajo reservation for the next month to do COVID vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the places that they visited was Horseshoe Bend, Arizona. It had that, beautiful pinks and oranges in the landscape and that turquoise water.
Yeah.
And so I thought I was, looking for something to doodle with that day. And so I just took that postcard and kind of played around with it. The early stages of it was horrible, Peach. It was horrible. I almost gave up on it. And then I kind of stepped away from it, a couple of times throughout the day. And then when I finally, the last layer that I added was the pink. And then I sent her a picture of it, and she said, oh my gosh, that is exactly what the landscape looks like out here. She said there's so much pink and orange, especially at sunset and sunrise. So anyway, I kind of enjoyed it later on, but man, early on, I didn't think it was going to work very well.
But I love Shelley's approach to, you can always find a way to work. And when she did it on those insulation panels, boy, was I ever impressed. I was impressed.
I would like to have a Shelley segment because she's so polite.
Yes.
I would like for you to share some interesting things that you've made art from in the future days as you come across.
And how to do
them.
it on the cheap, because she can do it. I mean, you know, it's like she inspires me to keep working, because even if you're in a situation where you can't spend $150 on some new paint, Shelley keeps working, and it's just so admirable. It really is.
I love that.
I like that. I love the idea of we're able to see your work that you've done before. So this is great.
I hope, yeah.
Just a reminder to you guys, please, these classes you should be at home. If you need to turn your camera off, if you need to log out, because we're out of time, and I know some of you have other obligations and things, don't feel like you have to be on any kind of ceremony. Just be comfortable to log out as you need to. It's usually late on the day on Tuesday and sometimes Wednesday before I get my recap done. But I always send a recap out with, and if you're not getting that, please let me know, Mary, I'll add you to that. I only send that to my current students because it will have the links to the videos. It will have any resources. I save the chat. Peach always gives us lots of links for materials, and I usually copy that and put that in the recap. So that comes to you at least in a day or two from after the class, so you have that resource. And if you have suggestions for other things, I've tried to write down everything that you guys have suggested, and I'll try to cover that in the upcoming weeks. And then I'll just do the master thing as we have time. Maybe we'll do a separate Zoom sometime for the master thing, because I think that we'll just play it by ear and see how that goes. Let me tell you, and I have a PowerPoint. I'll show it to you next week. I have probably 100 different teachers clips of video clips from teachers, from making brushes, how Rosemary makes their brushes, fabulously interesting to watch that little clip, to business of art, to all kinds of wonderful little master clips that I would love to share with some of you guys as we have time to do it. So any closing